Welcome to XpoNorth Digital Shorts. I am crazy excited today to have one of my favorite guests on. Ram, hello from your beautiful
Hi.
garden shed. It's so nice to have you here. So Ram is an associate professor at the School of Informatics at Edinburgh University, also involved in a startup. And the whole theme today is looking at robotics and looking at trust in AI. So Ram, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So to start with, I'm a roboticist. That's how we call ourselves in the technical speak. But more broadly speaking, I'm an engineer. I'm the kind of person who has a degree from 3 different departments. So I started out academic life in the area of instrumentation and electronics engineering. And then I got quite interested in what we call control systems. These are the kind of systems that go into everything from actually the hob, which is controlling your temperature, to kind of high performance aircraft, and so the underpinning technology behind this.
Can
And
I
so
ask
that
you really quickly, just to clarify, because that's a very specific interest. Why did that intrigue you so much?
because it started out with being quite interested, like with lots of kids. I started out wanting to be many things, including an astronaut. And at that time, I hadn't quite realized that India had only one astronaut and he didn't go up on an Indian spacecraft. Since then, all of that has happened. But at that time, none of this had happened. And then being interested in aerospace then got me into, what kind of problems would they be? And then actually control systems are a big part of that. And so my master's degree was in a department that was called Mechanical, Aerospace, and Nuclear Engineering. And then I came back for my PhD to in electrical and computer engineering. And so a lot of my work was in computer science. And so currently I'm in the School of Informatics, which is computer science and AI. And so my work, I run a lab in which, where we look at robot learning, which is how do you give intelligence and learning capabilities to robotic systems. These could be humanoid robotic systems, but not exclusively. And in fact, with my industrial hat on, now I'm part of a startup company where we are developing the technology stack for self-driving car. And so that is also a robot. And a self-driving car is really, it looks like your regular car with a little bit of an attachment, but the key distinction is you don't drive it, it drives itself. So one of the big accomplishments within this company has been that over the past couple of years, we've had a lengthy multi-month road trial in the city of London, where the car drove for big chunks of a 13-mile route by itself.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So, we're going to slide into the theme of trust in a second, because I know that's very important to you, and it really is connected with machine learning. So if they learn, there's an autonomous car, there's an autonomy that you're giving this synthetic intelligence. I can't think of a better trust exercise than getting into a car I can't drive as a complete control freak. And intellectually, I know that it probably is a better driver than I am, in terms of not being distracted, not having a lot of things on their mind. Still, it's very difficult. So when you, in that startup company, how much of trust is a conversation?
So trust is very much on our minds, because it's not just that you wouldn't get into it. It is also, would we as the designers be happy for you to get into it, right? As in, ultimately, we are people who want the best out of this technology. And not just as individuals, but even from a hard-nosed, pragmatic point of view, it would be disastrous for the development of AI technologies if they went wrong too many times early on, because it kills the field. And so safety is at the heart of literally everything we are trying to do. So a lot of our innovations are driven by the quest for safety. And not just quest for safety in the sense of historical engineering design, but the interplay between the need to use AI technologies that are adaptive, data-driven, exploratory to the extent that they're learning for themselves, married with all of the kind of traditional engineering concerns we've had about safety. We want to make sure that, so to give you some examples, most people are fortunate enough never to be in a serious accident. And in fact, if you look at the statistics, you are driving somewhere between 1 million to hundreds of millions of miles before anybody is in a serious accident. So I have never had like a proper serious accident. The only proper collision I've been in was when my car was parked and somebody rammed into it a little bit. And so that tells you that most people are at a level of safety that's completely unattainable by AI right now, because the technology isn't quite there, which then means that as engineers, we are already worried about safety. But then as product designers, you also have to think about, given that that is the state of the art, what would it take for people to start trusting it enough that they use it? And then once they start using it, and then we kind of restrict the domain so that we do trust it in that domain, how do you expand the domain?
So I have a big question about this idea of trust, and especially machine learning, just so you can kind of lay the landscape for us, because I know a lot of people might not even be aware of how far we've gotten so far with AI and machine learning. Yeah. I remember you were at the Big Bang Festival in Wigtown, and you showed a clip from Short Circuit. And the robot was trying to make breakfast and literally had no clue. Like eggs were flying everywhere. It looked like the punchline that you gave was it's actually incredibly hard to teach robots common sense sometimes. So where are we in the landscape of what are the current capabilities of AI, and what are your ambitions for it?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I should say is common sense is probably the real hard problem of AI. But then, as people often tell me, common sense is not quite that common even among our natural counterparts.
We haven't mastered it. How are we going to teach it? Basically.
Yeah. But the positive side of all of this is that most systems that we want to use, they can actually be deployed in somewhat restricted environments. So we are in a position where we are building lots of robots today. So there are robots that are doing, let's say, vacuum cleaning in your house. Most people don't think about a Roomba as a robot, but it is an honest to goodness robot. And then in modern versions of it, it has a camera and it can figure out where it is and things like that. We have robots that are doing, various aspects of delivery, cleaning, warehousing. So there are lots of robots in the world. Many of these things are autonomous, and autonomous meaning they perceive the environment for themselves, they make decisions about what to do next, and then they do that, right? Mm-hmm. The place where it all gets very difficult is when you want to give it so much autonomy that things change in the environment, things go wrong, and the whole environment changes, and the robot is still doing its task. So somehow that bit of long-term kind of persistent autonomy and being able to do that in a setting where it does it in much the same way as a person would do it without too much engineering of the environment, that's the hard problem. And it turns out like in applications like driving, that's actually where a lot of the difficulty is. If you're talking about, can you do a little bit of lane following? Can you do cruise control? These are by now very mature technologies. Most modern cars have cruise control. We trust it. Nobody has problems with it. Actually, most of flight, if you think about it, 90% of the time when you're sitting in a plane, the pilot isn't doing anything. They don't need to do anything. The plane can fly itself. Literally, it's 5 to 10% of the time when you're landing or when you're trying to take off or when you're in turbulent winds. That's literally the only time when you need human intervention. And even that is becoming automated away. And so I think that the real challenge here is specifications that are very complex for us to articulate even to each other. That's the hard bit for how do you put that into AI.
Well, can I ask, are we assuming that AI is going to learn like we do? Or are we trying to find new ways for AI to learn?
We normally explore both. So from the point of view that humans are the best existence proof of what a good AI should do, like all good scientists, we look at the thing that exists to find out what's going on. But actually, when we sit down and say, how do we want to build it, it's very, very rare that we mimic all of the natural world. Okay. It simply can't be done if anybody's serious about it. So I'm literally reading a book at the moment that talks about why the human brain is so much more efficient than computational brains. And the answer takes me all the way from how specialized protein folding mechanisms encode information to why it is that our retina is structured in a certain way. We can't mimic all of this stuff. This is too much. So what we actually do is to take from humans what seem to be cognitive principles that might guide algorithm design.
Okay.
So what we really copy is more at the level of cognitive science principles of, normally people don't just pick up the concept by themselves, they're taught. Right?
Okay.
So a good example is human learning is actually sequenced. If you think about it, it's not until the age of, if I remember correctly, 8 months or so that a human baby knows what an object is. If I left the room and came back, I might as well be a whole other person until 8 months. They don't know the difference. It's only after about a year that they know, yeah, it is you. And it takes 3 years to say you are dad. And then it takes many more years to say these are the attributes of dad. And actually, there are many other features about how you maintain beliefs about third persons and so on that don't come on till 5 years. So these kinds of things are helpful to know because it tells you in what sequence do you want to learn, how do you want to structure learning, where do you put the restrictions, what kind of objects and ontologies can you assume, things like that.
Rim, in this process, because a lot of people in the arts are going to be watching this, and I don't know how collaborative and cross-disciplinary is this kind of work? Do you work with designers at all, or programmers, or conceptual artists? How does that fit in?
So a lot of our work, and the way my lab is currently structured, we are already more interdisciplinary than some other kind of labs in the sense that people who have come into our area have had first degrees in everything from mathematics to kind of cognition and psychology. So to some extent, we are broad in terms of where people begin. And that breadth is necessary. So in fact, the School of Informatics was put together explicitly as a combination of cognitive science, artificial intelligence, computer science, mathematics, all of this. But now that we are talking about serious products and the kind of robots that might, not just the car. So in our lab, we are looking at, for instance, applications in medicine. So where we are beginning to ask the question, how do you build a surgical robot? And not just how do you build a surgical robot that can cut stuff up, but something that a surgeon would genuinely adopt because it gives them a benefit, but also it fits seamlessly into their workflow. So by the time we ask questions like that, we have to reach out. We have to understand then what does surgery entail. So I've stood through, as in I have had the opportunity to visit as a guest several surgeries, and so I've just stood there.
Are you squeamish at all?
It turns out I wasn't very squeamish. So I watched brain surgery where a tumor was being removed from the brain and the skull was being cut open, and as with everybody else in the room, we had to wear surgical gowns and masks and everything like that.
Wow. You were saying about if a robot can peel an orange, there's a correlation between that and surgery. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah. So the test case we have is we started out by thinking, okay, we want to simulate the surgical process, but I mean, we are a computer science lab, and how do we kind of step in? And in order so this goes to your interdisciplinarity point. So there's a collaboration between me as a roboticist and a computer scientist and a surgeon whose day job is to do neurosurgery and cancer neurosurgery. And so we wanted to explain to him what we could do because it wasn't clear, what are your capabilities? So we said, okay, let's set up an experiment. And the experiment was, we want to scoop out grapefruit. So we took the fruit, which is grapefruit, and then we have a knife, and we wanted to ask, how is it that people can seamlessly scoop out grapefruit? And then we came up with tactics for, well, this is a big problem because it seems simple on the face of it, but once you start doing it, you realize that it takes a lot of very good haptic feedback with your hand. So once it's gone in, you don't see where your knife is, but you can sense it, and you use that sensation to figure out how you want to do control. And this goes to very, very deep technical questions about how do you want to structure the controller and how do you want to tie it with haptic perception. But all of this, then when we showed it to the surgeon, what he told us is actually the grapefruit is pretty close to the actual consistency of brain. In the sense that if you were doing tumor surgery, you would have a hard tumor, which is sitting inside kind of soft brain tissue. And what we were trying to do with kind of, glide between the peel and the fruit is not that far from what they're trying to do with surgery. So it turned out to be a very good test case to start with.
Did it work?
It does. So our robot can now very competently scoop out and prepare grapefruit and all this and stuff like that. And we are at the position where we are now kind of more seriously asking the question, what would the next set of experiments be? And we are now working with a couple of different medics. So one of them has been looking at things like skin cancer, and we're trying to ask, would it be possible for us to make a phantom version of skin cancer and then excise that? And if that works, then we can slowly work our way into the body until we get to more complex cancers.
That's amazing. Tina, I think this is so important to you. First of all, it's very exciting and really amazing work. And I think it's so important for people to hear, which is why I really encourage more storytellers to go into that industry and for scientists to become storytellers, because I think in order to build trust in AI, instead of having it look magic, like it appeared complete overnight, it's really interesting to hear the steps that it takes to get where you want to go, so that we trust each of the steps and what the scientists have learned and why it was built that way. So it's very powerful. It's really exciting. Can I ask, I would, because of my imagination, if I were working in your field, I would anthropomorphize every robot. Do you do that? Are you quite, because you know the inner workings and you program, are you quite clear that they don't have personalities and they're not, how does that work?
I think we are quite clear that they don't have personalities, but we are very well aware that they have quirks. So especially because these platforms, there are only a few of these platforms. And a very good example is we have this one robot in our lab called PR2, which is a commercial robot. It was built by a company in California, but there's really only 50 or so of them in the world. And by now, we know some other labs who have one of these robots. And we actually talk about it in terms of, well, my PR2 still has this working and yours seems to have broken. So it is a form of anthropomorphization, if you like. Yeah. But kind of to the bigger question, I don't think it takes away the magic of what's happening from knowing how it works. So there's a quote I remember from Feynman where he was saying, you know, I can look at a flower and both appreciate the fact that it's beautiful, and knowing the physics of it, appreciate the fact that the physics of it is also beautiful. The optics.
Yeah, wonderful.
And one form of beauty doesn't need to take away the existence of the other form of beauty. And I think it's a bit like that. So in fact, now it's a back and forth thing. So sometimes I'm watching our 2-year-old son, and then he's gliding down the stairs or doing some peculiar thing with how he opens a box. And my first instinct is, let's videotape this, because this is really fascinating how his behavior is evolving, and I want to see it in different stages. And that's both appreciating him as a person, but also appreciating how quickly and how remarkably well he's managed to do representation learning, something that would take entire research groups their entire career to mimic.
Yeah, Ram, I really agree, which is why it's so important that you're taking your time to talk with us today and give us that insight into that process. So really, thank you, because I think the farther along these things get and the more complex the workings of AI, for the layman like me, it becomes a little less attainable to understand right away. So being invited into the process when we talk about trust is huge, I think. Can I ask, we're totally over time, where would you like to be with this in 5 years?
With the medical projects that I was mentioning to you, our explicit goal for 5 years is to have built up the technology well enough that we have kind of progressed along from phantom experiments that we can do in a robotics lab, in my lab, to kind of tissue and possibly kind of first in human kind of experiments in that time frame. There's a lot that would need to be worked out, everything from kind of ethical approvals to efficacy and things like that. But that's exactly the kind of ladder we'd like to climb. But more conceptually, for me, the big scientific question that's driving all of this is, what are the kind of underpinning engineering principles for achieving safety in an AI system? that is both kind of adaptive and clever enough to learn like people do, but also reliable enough that, it's at the level of reliability that a NASA engineer sending a spacecraft would think is reasonable.
Yeah, that's really great. So this may be opening up a can of worms, but my guess is in 2028, I think it was, where Ray Kurzweil was talking about the singularity. We're far from that. Is that
We
your...
are, but I think a lot of that kind of discussion about singularity and artificial general intelligence, it is deliberately kind of vague about what it is you want to achieve. And so it's both fanciful and kind of, not quite ambitious enough in the sense of saying, what would you like to see? I would be much happier if I saw robots that could do meaningful tasks that people actually use. For me, it's more exciting if I could get a robot that's actually in a surgical theater and is improving the lives of surgeons and the patient, than it would be to have just theorized things like that. And then leave it at speculation.
Yeah, oh, I think that's really, and that's, thanks, well, thank you so much for your time. And just to leave it off, do you have any words of advice from things that you find that help you work better, or when you feel like you need to be creative? Any words of advice that you find helpful?
Yeah, I would say that for me, what has helped me the most is to reach out broadly. So almost all of my connections that have become useful and kind of very, very instrumental in my life, in my work life, have come from completely random meetings that happened in random places. So I got involved with autonomous vehicles through one of my students who was talking to somebody who was setting up this company. I got involved in surgery through somebody whom I met at one of the academies that we are both a member of. And I think it's really important to always look broadly, speak to musicians, speak to artists, speak to engineers, and you never know when something you pick up from them would be useful much later in your professional life.
That is really wise words. Thank you, Ram. I would love to do a part 2 with you sometime and see how things are going. Joseph Campbell always says that a functional mythology should incorporate the science knowledge of our times. And we're talking a little bit about Picard and the trust in synthetics. And I think your finger's on the pulse with the idea that trust is becoming the key issue when it comes to these emerging technologies and AI. So you are leading the way, and I'm very glad you're there. It makes me trust what's coming.
I'm glad, and it would be my pleasure to do a part 2 at some point.
That sounds great. Ram, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.